Welcome to the special program with Dr. Markus Huna. Markus is a lecturer at the Institute of Social Anthropology at the University of Leipzig. He received his PhD from the Martin Luther University. Since 2013, he is lecturing at the University of Leipzig. He has been researching Somali affairs since 2002. He will cover today some questions about his latest report as he documented a large scale of destruction and death in Lasanod, which he visited last month. Thank you for your time, Marcus. My name is Hashi. Please welcome to the program. Thank you for your time, Mr. Marcus. Welcome to the program. My name is Hashi. I would like to ask you some questions regarding about your recent research you have been releasing from Lasanod.
Thank you very much.
First of all, to start off, the questions that we have been calculating these days is, give me that was not your visit to Lasanod. Could you articulate the differences you observed this around in comparison to your previous visits? What stark the contrast were evident in the city of the forest?
Yeah, thank you very much. The difference between my previous visits and my most recent visit was, of course, that previously Lasanod was not at war. So, I mean, I was visiting Lasanod from 2002 onwards very many times. The most recent time I think I was in Lasanod must have been 2017 or 18, before the war. So, I mean, I saw the city, which was, back then it was it was not developing. I mean, it was stable, it was at peace, but it was not developing. There was a lack of development. It was marginalized, let's say 2002, 2003, 2004, and so on. But the biggest difference, of course, to my most recent visit, which was just in May, like 6 weeks ago, May 2023, was that in the last visit now in May was a time of war. So Lasanod is currently attacked by the Somaliland army, and the like more than 90% of the town's population have fled. So they left the city to the countryside in order to avoid being damaged by the war. And of course, I saw also damaged houses. I saw many armed men in the city. So yeah, that was the biggest difference.
In your report, you documented a distress escalation in the number of the casualties. Could you elaborate on the sources on direct observations that lead you to these conclusions?
Yeah, then I was like once the conflict started in January, I have been in contact with local people who I mean, many of whom I know since years. And when the bombardment started on 6th of February 2023, I have daily called people in Lasanod. I mean, who were left after many others fled. So there were some people in the working in the hospitals as doctors or as nurses. I talked with the Red Crescent, Bishas, Banlahadley. So, and I talked with several friends I have in the city who also remained in their houses in order to guard their houses and support the others in town. So I had daily talks like with 3 to 5 people, including doctors from the various hospitals in Lasanod, General Hospital, Manhal Hospital, and others. And then in this context, I collected on a daily basis also the number of casualties, what was known back then. And then later on, the doctors shared with me their statistics. So in May, they started sharing their daily statistics of people injured and killed in the conflict. Of course, only those who were delivered to hospitals in Lasanod. So in this way, I think I got a realistic number of the casualties on the side of those people defending Lasanod, mostly Dulbahante. But there are more casualties. So I also spoke to some people in Somaliland, in Hargeisa. I have some contacts also in the military, in the army. And I spoke to some of my old friends who are still part of Somaliland. And they also gave me some rough estimations about the number of casualties on the Somaliland side. So, and in this way, I tried to come up with with a realistic number. So I believe that up until today, approximately 5,000 people were injured or killed in the conflict on all sides.
The scale of destruction and death in Lasanod has led to some of the categorized the situation as a genocide. Based on your first-hand account and the information you gathered, do you concur with this assessment?
No, I don't, because the term genocide is a very specific term in my understanding. It's a legal term, if you like. There's a genocide convention by the United Nations, which I think is from 1950, if I'm not mistaken. And a genocide has a specific definition. And I'm not. I think in the most recent years, the term genocide has been overused actually in the Somali context. I think the people who started it were people from Somaliland who said a genocide happened in northern Somalia in the 1980s. This is, this is still, I mean, atrocities happened, mass killings happened, crimes against humanity happened. I think this is very obvious. But if it was a genocide or not, this is something which still needs to be investigated. It was something which needs to be ideally decided in a court of law or by some other institutions. In general, I think this term genocide has been overused, and it has been used by many others in the area by people, to characterize massacres which happened in 1991 in the area of Dila in west of northern Somalia or Somaliland. They speak about the Dila genocide. No, people in Lasanod speak about the SSC genocide. I personally, but this is my very personal position, I wouldn't use this term. I would speak about human rights violations. I would speak about crimes against humanity. I would speak about massacres. So that's
Yeah,
what I.
when we look at into your one of your points, the word dynamics in Lasanod, you have used the word of that Dulbahante habitat, those areas. And there's also the books that you have been writing since then. And you have mentioned many times that Dulbahante specifically doesn't recognize the Somaliland separatists. So in that terms, the most force from Somaliland is Isa clan. So connecting those, do you believe this is that angle of genocide could take since Dulbahante is one clan against the separatists and the secessionists all the way the north side in Somalia?
Well, I think what we could observe would be something like ethnic cleansing or clan cleansing, right? So I think it's more like the Somaliland government, supported mainly but not only by Isaac, is trying to control this whole area, like the regions from Buhotle to Las Anod to northern Somalia and eastern Somalia, so like Solsanak and Ain region. So they're trying to control this whole land. And they might, I mean, obviously they started even pushing out the people from their own homes. So, I mean, for me, if I would have to categorize this, I would say this is it could lead to a form of clan cleansing. So driving Dulbahanta out of their homes, controlling their land for the sake of making this claim to the territory of the British Protectorate. So which is the basis of the Republic of Somaliland today. This claim that we control this territory. So this is what it leads to in my eyes if it's not controlled, if it's not checked.
Mm-hmm.
But I do not want to go into the other debates because I'm not a lawyer, and these things are very sensitive issues, and I think it can be decided by those people who are authorized.
Right, sir. The other international organizations, yeah, I got you. The administration in Somaliland has asserted the claims of the terrorist activities in the region. During your Las Anod, did you encounter any evidence that could substantiate their claims?
No, not at all. So, I mean, I've been in Lasanod many times over the years. There was never an issue of AlShabab presence in town. Not more than in any other place in Somalia. I mean, you could find people who were supporting AlShabab in Bor'o. You could find them in Hargeisa on an individual basis. You could find them in Erigavo. And you could, of course, also find a few individuals who were close to this type of ideology in Las Anod. Everybody knows that. But if you say now AlShabab is behind the uprising in Lasanod, this is absolutely wrong. This is not the case. This has never been the case. AlShabab has not a presence as an organized force, organized group in Lasanod. And it's also weird for me to see this argumentation because the conflict over Lasanod has been around for 20 years. I literally have seen exactly these issues. Dulbahante being pro-Somalia, being anti-Somaliland, waving the Somali flag, waving the blue flag. I have seen this in 2002 when I was the first time in my life in Lasanod. So people had exactly this position. And people in Hargeisa should know this. They would know this. I mean, like senior people like in the government or intellectuals, they would know that people in Lasanod, in Buhotle and other places, Teleh, they are not supporting secessionism of Somaliland. They are pro-Somalia. They want Somali unity. So this is nothing new. I find it extremely irritating that the leadership of Somaliland tries to make a claim that this uprising has been pushed by AlShabab, because the reasons why people, or the political aims for which people in Lasanod and surroundings and the SSC regions are fighting, these political aims have been around for over 20 years. It was absolutely clear that these people do not support the secession of Somaliland.
Okay.
So you do not need AlShabab for that. You don't need to come up with AlShabab. So there's no AlShabab around. I never saw any AlShabab there. I have been there in May 2023. There was no AlShabab in town. And the political struggle is not being pushed by any extremists. The political struggle is the expression of the will of Dulbahante.
Okay, and so except the shelling from Gocha, the northeast of Lasana, during your staying and overseeing the city, is there any way you can feel unsafe in those areas when you make some activity?
Yeah, I mean, the eastern part of town is still quite unsafe. So when I was there in May, I traveled throughout through the town, documenting also damages done by the bombardment through the Somaliland army. I was taking photographs from damaged houses and other infrastructure, including the general hospital. And then the eastern part of town around Hotel Hamdi is strongly damaged. There's a lot of, damaged houses, burned cars. And this is an area which back then in May at least was still in the reach of snipers from the Somaliland army. So they had a position on the hills to the northeast of Lasanod. And when we were in this area around Hotel Hamdi, we couldn't move. We couldn't move freely, so we had to hide behind the walls in order not to become a target for the snipers.
So do you believe that those snipers they can shoot out anyone they see, even if they are not armed or?
Well, I think sniper guns, I'm not a military expert, but I heard that they carry around 3 kilometers and that, they can reach people in eastern Lasanod. And there has been at least one incident, as far as I remember, where a man in the eastern area, I mean, a little bit east of Hotel Hamdi, has been shot by a sniper not so long ago. I mean, it was like probably in April. So I think technically speaking, they can do that. I haven't heard any incident in the last 4 weeks, I would say.
But no one safe in Lasano.
There was one case where a man from Lasanod was shot by a sniper, but this is a while ago, as you said.
Yeah, gotcha. So can you give us the detailed the breakdown of the extent damage across the different sectors in Lasano? Which the components of the city's infrastructure were mostly detrimental affected?
Okay, I mean, there were quite a few private houses which have been damaged. So, I mean, there have been dozens of houses. I mean, extremely many in the eastern part of Lasanod, but also in other parts, in the southern part. When the war started on 6th of February, the Somaliland forces still held some positions south of Lasanod. So initially, some fighting happened in the east and in the south. So you find also damaged houses in southern Lasanod, in a neighborhood called Madaremen. Then you find lots of damaged houses in the east of Lasanod and also partly in the center. Then, of course, the general hospital of Lasanod has been damaged. Some shells have hit the hospital and damaged the house in which the blood bank is located. So I documented this as well. It was also documented by Doctors Without Borders. The mosque has been hit several times. Also, Manhal Hospital has been hit. I visited Manhal Hospital. The solar facilities producing the electricity for the General Hospital and the Manhal Hospital have been damaged. There have been many bullets, hitting the solar panels, so they do not function anymore. Um, so this is one thing. I've also visited the electricity plant, which is a little bit northwest of Las Anod, producing electricity for the town. So this also has been attacked by Somaliland forces. Also, one of the workers has been killed in this context. I took an interview with one of the workers who gave me a witness statement on this. Though the electricity plant is not working at the moment, it has been also hit by a shell. Some of the infrastructure has been damaged. Some of the machines have been damaged. So the electricity plant is out of work, or it's partly out of work. I think it works maybe at a capacity of like 30 to 40%. So several of the big machines are not working. And then, I mean, one of the big problems for people in Las Anod, particularly in the first weeks of the war in February, were that the Somaliland forces also cut the water supply of town. So the water plant, which is located near Gocha Ade, where Somaliland forces have their stronghold, has been occupied by Somaliland forces, and it stopped working. And there have been allegations that Somaliland forces have done some damage to the plant, but this is not proven. However, I spoke with one of the board members of the water plant, and he explained to me that even if there has been no further damage done to this plant, the fact that it stopped working for more than 3 days means already that all the filters have to be exchanged. So the water plant entails a complex filter system, and these filters are extremely expensive. So the fact that Somaliland forces cut the water supply and stopped the plant working means by now, after many, many weeks, that the filter system, that's at least this, what it was absolutely sure that the filter system needs to be exchanged, and it costs close to $1 million to do that. I mean, that's already one damage. And it was, of course, problematic for people in Las Anod because the water supply was cut at a time of drought. So in February, it was still July, so the long dry season. So people had to get water from outside of town, like from this southern area from Hout. So these are the damages I could see.
Holly, those are the clear war crimes and the violations against the humanitarian law and international humanitarian law, including the other human rights. So I can tell, and you can tell maybe, the reflection on your experience and the finding in Las Anod and the broader SSC region. What message do you believe should be conveyed to the global community?
And the international community should realize that this conflict is not over Las Anod, it's not over a small place, it's not over some local resources. This conflict is over fundamental political differences. The local population, and they are not a small group. I mean, Rubahante is a considerable group, and they also in line with what Singeli think. So there's the people inhabiting what is called Eastern Somaliland. They are, this is a considerable part of the population of Northern Somalia, and they are not in favor of secession. So this conflict in Las Anod is essentially about the question of Somali unity versus the secession of Somaliland. So it's not over Las Anod. Las Anod only became the signal, the sign of this problem. But this conflict could also happen, of course, in Buhod. It could happen in Tileh. It could happen in Baran. It could happen in Dahar. So it could happen all over,
It,
the areas
and
where
already
where where,
happened,
where Harti where
and
Harti
all,
live.
and it already has happened in Puhol in 2000, between 2011 and 2013 almost.
No,
Culture.
10. It was 2010, 2011. Yes. I mean, it has happened there, but on a much smaller scale. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have documented this in my book Between Somaliland and Puntland. So this conflict has happened there, but on a smaller scale and not involving so many civilian victims.
Mhm.
So back then in 2010, 2011, SSC militias clashed with the Somaliland army. Many people were injured and killed. There's now a monument in Buhotle remembering this massacre, the Koshale massacre. Absolutely, you're right. So as I said, this conflict has a very long history. This conflict has a long history. It was initially a political conflict. It then became a militarized conflict over the years. Kalchale is one of their escalation moments. And now we have Lasanod, which is really an escalation on a very high niveau of military confrontation. Yeah, the international community should understand that this problem is an essentially political issue, and what is at stake is the question of Somali unity versus secession of Somaliland, and that's why it's such a thorny issue. It needs a long-term political solution, um, and I hope that the international community is going to support this long-term political solution. Because it's not, I mean, like, I do not think that people in Las Anod or in the whole area, in the whole SSC regions, will ever return to Somaliland. And also actually other people in Eastern Sanak, the Warsangili in Eastern Sanak, they already dropped out of Somaliland. They participated fully in the Puntland local government elections. There's no presence of Somaliland administration in the Warsangili areas. So this is a reality, and this is also since several years the case. So basically, you cannot pretend, the international community should not pretend as if we find a solution and people return to Somaliland. No, it's not going to happen. I don't think so. There must be negotiations which take this issue seriously. And in my eyes, these negotiations must involve the federal government in Mogadishu, the government of Puntland, because it's an important regional administration, the representative of Dulbahante and probably also Warsangili, and of course the government in Hargeisa. So there must be negotiations about the status of this whole territory, and it's quite likely that people in this territory are not going to return ever to Somaliland again.